Thank you, Bjorn. And yes, I've always enjoyed this conference. I think it's one of the better ones that brings people together around this topic, of which is digital engagement in all of its many flavors. And so we live in very exciting times, and while we still see the same emerging use cases and the case studies, I really was encouraged the last 2 days to see how many more specific use cases have been identified. We used to have a few things like expertise location, knowledge sharing, things like that. But now we're hearing about hundreds of use cases, and dozens of different use cases were displayed on the screen here. So I think these are all maturity points. But we're still in what I like to call the cave painting days of digital, right? This is barely started, right? What's going to happen over the next few decades is going to be truly amazing, and we're starting to see what those broad outlines are. So I'm hoping that I kind of paint that picture. So I got one of my famous decks crowded with my latest research and others' research as well. The slides are designed as signposts for you to go for further study. So don't just let it kind of wash over you. So there's a lot of information here, but it's all important information. I've tried not to put anything here that isn't going to be something that you're going to have to deal with relatively soon in terms of bringing your organization forward. So we're going to talk about industry trends and then talk about some building blocks, and then we're going to have a quick panel, and I'm hoping that'll be a good capstone for this conference. So let's talk about what's happening, or what we think is happening, right? This is the hard part. There's so much going on in the industry in terms of new technologies, new practices and methods, and we're all learning from each other, and some organizations are getting farther ahead. In fact, this is the issue with technology. It's a force multiplier, and it pushes the leaders and laggards apart. A few organizations are a lot farther ahead, right? It's the long tail effect. Most of us are in the tail, however. So it used to be that we could kick the can on digital transformation. That's I think, an American euphemism that says that we don't have to deal with it now. It can be someone else's problem. We're only going to be here for 3 to 5 years. That's not the case anymore. This is recent data published in Harvard Business Review that says that now most executives have concluded that they're going to face serious disruption in the next 12 months. There is no kicking the can anymore. They have to do something, and they have to do it now. Now, bad news, of course, they haven't started. They're in big trouble. But most organizations have started, right? But they're now expecting that some new digital competitor, either from one of their existing competitors or from the startup world, is going to dramatically impact them. And this is all broken down by industry. So this is the imperative, right? The disruption is here, and it will greatly affect our organizations. This is a chart that's displayed all the time. This is a great study of the S&P 500 showing that the average lifespan of organizations in the S&P 500 is dropping dramatically. It is cyclical. I think someone brought that up. I think it's Hayden brought that up. Said that, well, no, it's cyclical. Sometimes it goes back up. But the overall trend is that it goes down, and this research looked into why is this the case. And most organizations are failing to adapt to changing technologies. So this is Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia, all those companies, many of them technology companies, in fact, right? Barnes and Noble and Borders in the United States, all these companies, large chains are gone, right? No longer in business. Primarily due to how their industry was remade by technology, and they failed to adapt, and they're no longer here. And that's why another imperative, why we have to do this. So the issue is, of course, is that the rate of change continues to increase. And at some point, our organizations fall off the curve. In fact, I would argue most of our organizations have already fallen off the change curve. We can't climb that fast. It's gotten too steep. We live in exponential times. And so we're about to hit an inflection point. We're going to fall off the curve right here. Yet the world's going to continue to ascend, right? And so this is the famous thing Jack Welch says, is when the rate of change outside your organization is much greater than what's inside your organization, something will eventually break, and eventually it's not that long from now, right? So how can we organize? How can we do better? How can we restructure ourselves? So we see these kind of broad trends. We're going to show you a few other charts like this, but we see that we're going to a much more consumerized, proactive world where our stakeholders pull everything to them. We can push all we want, right? But that doesn't work anymore. They really pull everything they want to themselves. They're much more self-actualized. We're not going to package up solutions because they're going to build the workplaces, the customer experiences that they want from the things that we have and the things that other people will give them or provide to them. Everything's going to go to a much more integrated view. This is one of the reasons, by the way, things like Slack are so successful, because you can do everything from within it. You can access all of your email, all of your calendars, all of your other systems that store documents and knowledge. You can talk to other smart systems. You can search. You can do everything in one consistent, integrated way. And so when someone figured out how to provide an integrated service like that, Google does the same thing. Our enterprise social networks are becoming this kind of kitchen sink in that regard as well, right? They're kind of trying to provide everything and make it more integrated. That's what people want. Make my stuff work together. And we're going from this kind of B2B and B2C model is outdated, right? It's kind of more, we're talking to our ecosystems where it's business to community. Is this new model. We're no longer doing point-to-point communication where broadly have to engage with the marketplace in scale. We have to talk to all of our advocates. We have to engage with all of our employees, with all of our suppliers. These are the big digital trends in terms of the vision. We're seeing things, it says, okay, we have to do this, make this more holistic and integrated. You know, moving away from CRM, which was never about relationship management. It was a record-keeping system, to things like customer experience management. That's a buzz phrase for you, sometimes called digital experience management. This is the process of kind of holistically organizing your digital experiences, right, for your workers or for whatever stakeholders that you have, so that it works better and it's not this disjointed, inconsistent, siloed experience like it is now in most organizations, both inside and outside. So this applies, it's called customer experience management. I prefer digital experience management because that covers all the stakeholders. But it's really about not the customer's value to the enterprise, it's the enterprise's value to the customer, right? It's a new way of thinking about it. It's about people and interactions, right? Not about transactions. It's about the value to us as people, right? The emotional connection. And the reason for doing this is that there are some companies that have been trying to sort this out. Great examples include Nike and Burberry, very respected brands. Apple does this well, Disney does this well. They're all leaders, right? And that those who have good, well thought out and integrated digital experiences outperform the market considerably. And those who don't significantly underperform the market on average, right? So this has real and immediate economic value. But most people are still trying to wrap their heads around, all right, so how do I do that? And you're going to see here a lot in coming years about digital experience management platforms. We're going to have to go through all of that, of which our social and community experiences are going to be an integral part, often at the center is what we're seeing. Well, there's a whole story there. And customers want this. Companies have the highest loyalty, also have the best customer experience, digital experience management, right, compared to those who don't. Those who are the poorest ones have a much lower adoption of these kind of more strategic ways of managing digital. So this is what we're trying to do. Digital has now become, digital first is the mantra for most business now, and it's been siloed across functions, and now we're trying to say, how do we make this work better? This is what customers want. There's value in it. Those who are doing it well are seeing the results. Marketing, still a big deal, but I pulled this data from Smart Insights. It's a couple months old. But what are people going to be investing? Where do they see the greatest commercial impact in engagement, right? And some of it's actually just marketing. And marketing automation is a big deal, but content is still the thing that people believe. Our conversations, right? Our ideas, our discussions with each other are now the most important thing. Notice that social media marketing is high on the list, but not as high as things like big data and mobile marketing. But this is where this is where the industry as a whole believes that there's value. What about B2C, social engagement, if we're still going to call that? It's really B2 community, right? We see that depending on what industry, it really matters what channels that you focus on, right? So for example, there's a big outlier. If you're in the apparel business, Instagram is a huge platform, but it doesn't play well in other areas. So just kind of understanding where people find the value and breaking it down by industry, we're starting to get a sense of how we should be engaging, at least on the public social networks. But mobile is the engagement platform for the future. It's entirely additive, by the way. You're still going to make all of your social experience, your customer experience, your digital experience work on all the old channels and the new ones. And there's ones beyond mobile. We're going to talk about post-mobile in just a minute. But if you're really looking to fundamentally engage, the platform that you need to become an expert on, and most of our businesses are not good at mobile. They're brand new platforms that our IT departments don't understand very well, don't have a lot of skills in, and they're changing very rapidly, very rapidly. And so they're hard targets to hit, except that we're going to see that right around 2018, 2019 is the real tipping point. So you got a couple years to organize for that. But if you want to stay relevant, you have to be a mobile-first organization and every other engagement channel as well. The Internet of Things is coming, which is interesting, because right now most of the data in the world is created in social channels. I still find it surprising most people don't know that. Almost 90% of everything on the Internet is created on social platforms, right? So something like several billion photos a day on Facebook, hundreds of thousands of videos on YouTube, and then you add up all the other channels. Almost everything is created by us, right? The Internet of Things may change that. We're going to get 40 billion devices soon. And by the way, they're an important engagement story too, because we can't possibly work with, using traditional methods, all of the things that are about to become connected. Every non-trivial object in our work lives and personal lives is about to be connected. I was talking to the CTO of Nike the other day. They're going to connect everything that they make, everything. Down to your clothes will tell you when you have to wash them, how long they've been used, how often you've worn them, everything. Everything will be streaming data all the time, and we're going to want to be able to control and orchestrate these things. How do we do that? Well, that's coming. So one of the things Bjorn had mentioned is, with everything becoming smart, right, and everything becoming something we can engage with, we need very much more high-efficiency interfaces to engage not only with devices, but with each other as well. How can we do that? I'm now in Slack. I can actually say, could you reschedule my next meeting and find another open spot? And my calendar bot will go off, actually talk to that person if it can't find a spot nearby and say, is there anything you can reschedule? Or talk to two people if there's, and say, when can you meet with Dion? It's amazing. As I don't have time to do it myself, but my chat bot can. So chat bots and conversational user experiences, those are going to be the hot new thing. Amazon Echo, Siri, Cortana, all these are technologies that are going to allow us to engage with each other and with our devices at scale much more easily. You can say, hey, home, can you turn off all the lights, but turn them on right before dawn, or whatever it is you want to do. You're going to be able to engage and collaborate with everything in your life, not just people, but all your devices, everything you're connected to. So that's the trend, is that we're about to see that collaboration and communication is going to take a quantum leap forward in how easy it's going to be to do. We're not going to be typing nearly as much. We're going to have conversations with everything, engage with everything in very simple, frictionless ways. And everyone's very busy. Chatbots and conversational user experiences are a big thing with artificial intelligence behind it, right? To go do things for you, right? So those are all exciting. So how does that, in our community world, which is where most of us spend a lot of our time, how's that going to affect us? Well, I gather together some of the top folks in community and go, hey, I'm pretty sure we're going to see things like community management, all the most common activities about helping users and making sure that when questions are asked, somebody answers them, are going to be handled by these same intelligent agents, if you will, right? So chatbots are going to handle all low-level community management, and community managers can focus on the high-level thing. And I had everyone from Rachel Hoppe, who was the founder of SocialCast, Carrie Basham-Young, said, yep, I absolutely see it. Then, and we had this conversation on Twitter, I had companies coming up to me going, oh, we're working on community manager chatbots. Right, this is how we're going to see that engagement is going to be assisted. So this is the cognitive collaboration story, part of it anyway. So I spent a lot of time at conferences this year, and everyone's talking about this next wave is how do I put smart intelligence into the way we're using all of this? I want to say, hey, where am I having adoption problems in my social network? And you'll instantly surface that. Why am I seeing adoption problems, right? How am I performing in my social network this week versus last week? All those sorts of things will be much, much easier to do with these new forms of engagement. So it's exciting. But bringing the discussion back up, we see that the big conversations around creating these platforms, right? We talked about, it's clear that the enterprise social network is a platform for change, for digital transformation. That's going to be a big story. But what we're really being pushed to do is saying these platforms need to be running our business. This is how we work with our customers, how we work with our partners, and how our employees work with them in turn, right? So we're going to be pushed to really expand all of this and make them part of these digital business platforms that we're building. Social business is still, I think, the biggest umbrella for all this. You know, I'm not hung up on terminology. I just, you know, we have to use some shorthand to talk about what do we mean. And social business seems to be the kind of the overall broad construct around social engagement, around community, around enterprise social networks. And it's where it's a growth industry, and not by a small amount either. The latest data from Technavio, this is a couple months old, so it'll be a $23 billion industry in a few years. It's going to grow annually by 26%. That's faster than big data, okay, which is only going to grow at 14% a year through that same time period. Engagement is the currency of business today, right? And companies are broadly investing. Jane was here at the event last year saying she couldn't believe it. In 1 year, companies have gone from about 25% adoption of ESNs to 60%, right? So we're at the beginning of this big inflection point. And so, you know, using social tools to help us achieve business objectives in better, more scalable, more efficient ways, that's still the goal, and we're just starting. We still hear that you know, these case studies from organizations that have just begun that journey, and now they have to get the value out of it. So McKinsey did a big roundup. Michael Chewy, the head of the McKinsey Global Institute, says, you know, did a big economic study of social business, released it just a few days ago, in fact, right? This is May 2016. On average, half of social business stakeholders say social tools have better enabled digital activity. So if you take something that's digital and you add social to it, about half say it makes it much better. But in some areas, it makes it much, much better. And I was very surprised at the data, because this is not what we're talking about in our little industry, right? Things like order to cash. If you look at this chart here at the top, that top line is the average benefits. Right? It's about half say that social makes digital better. But it's in areas like order to cash, demand planning, and R&D. You get big impact. Oh, I got to tie my shoelace here, or you'll see me pitch off the stage. So these are not areas that we really have traditionally focused on, right? We might do some ideation, right? But we mostly talk about knowledge sharing, knowledge management, but not these very high value parts of the business, right? That create our products, that generate the revenue for our organization and things like that. So these are important areas, and it shows that we still have some work to do, because organizations that have done it, they go, that helps. You add social to that digital activity, and it works much better. And so we still have work to do to sort that out. What will these same social business participants, this is 2,000 companies surveyed that do social broadly, right? That was what was nice about this. This is a large, statistically valid cohort. What do you think is next, the next 3 years? And it's very illustrative. Structural and management changes that social tools are expected to bring about in the next 3 years. Employees can communicate more often with others in different teams, functions, or business units. Well, no kidding. I mean, that's exactly what these social tools do. It allows anyone to participate, right? That's what I call the fundamental principle of social business. Tearing down silos, right, is what the majority of people think. Day-to-day work can become more project-based instead of more team or function-based, right? The old industrial model of specialization says we have teams and dedicated functions, and they do the same thing over and over and over again, instead of working on projects, which have a lot more value to an organization than an isolated, disconnected function out of context, right? Projects are outcome-based. That's one of the things we hear a lot about these new models for operating. Teams can self-organize. Boundaries between employees, vendors, and customers will blur, and organizations' formal hierarchy can become much flatter or disappear. There's a lot more in the report, by the way. I only selected the things that had about 25% or higher reporting as what people who've used these tools for a while now, where do they think it's going, right? And so we see the same broad trends. It's going to change the nature, the structure of our organizations and the way that we work, and it's going to make our work much more outcome-based. That's what the people who are doing this broadly say. So I think that's encouraging. This is a brand new report, that's also a few days old, from Government Communications Headquarters of the UK government about what they think that is happening. And it's basically, if you look at all these things, we're not going to go through it, it's less fixed everything, right? So we have fixed structure and fixed processes to much more dynamic and connected ways of working, ways of hiring, ways of managing projects, ways of staffing what we do and recruiting talent, the ways of operating, ways of creating, which is moving to co-creation, things like that. So these are the broader trends that they see. By the way, you've got to look at that report. It's called, it has a terrible name, but Boiling Frog Report. But it's getting a lot of attention. You can find it on my Twitter account right now. I just tweeted it out. So that was trends, right? Trying to get a sense of what's happening out there, right? So social and community is getting closer to the business. It's getting smarter, more cognitive, more data driven. We're seeing that the use cases are maturing. And now we got to take the next step, and that is we have to more properly structure our organization, because we're still just doing this either in hot spots, right, or just a small part of the time, right, a percentage of our time. I thought that data was very interesting. 75% of managers can know the value, but only 25% use these tools daily, right? That's very interesting to me. So it shows we have a lot of work to do. So how can we transform more deliberately, and especially in the face of exponential change? How can we get back on that curve? And how can we do, if this stuff is good, which we now, the data shows that it is. There's no doubt. I've been here at this conference presenting the data about, yes, almost every measure, every measure, working this way is better. It's just harder and messier sometimes, right? But it's better. That's the big qualitative difference. So what building blocks will allow us to get there? So the first building block, and by far the most important one and the most troublesome one, is us, right? People are at the center of it. The technology is an enabler, right? But it's really just unleashing and realizing human potential. But we have to realize it. We're the ones that have to change as much as the technology, right? Because it works differently and provides and creates value in new and different ways, right? And our behavior is changing, just slowly for most of us, right? Some organizations are different, but for most of us. Digital engagement is a single connected continuum. And it doesn't work well when it's not. This is one of the conversations we've had this last couple days. All these things don't actually work together very well, right? We've recreated a new silo problem somehow on this journey, and we've got to resolve that. But the reality is it is a single continuum, both in the real world and on digital, with people as the fundamental building block. And what that's going to allow us to do, what it is allowing many companies, especially leaders, to do, is to create ecosystems. Right, holding your customers closer, holding your workers closer, right? Be able to provide more to them, to have more understanding and awareness and knowledge, right? And then be able to do things that create value, right? So here's some of the things. This is one of my ecosystem charts saying, this is what's kind of growing around most companies that are becoming digitally networked, right? And some of them are very specific. So we're creating, we have things like customer communities where they can support each other and they can give us product ideas. We've got ways of opening up our data and sharing that over the network as well. We have many things that we can do that we're doing just a little bit. We're doing it just a little bit. Now, if you look at like a leader like Amazon, they're doing all of this like to the walls, right? They're going all the way. They're turning the knob. Say this provides value. Why don't we just turn the knob all the way to the right? And because this is unfortunately, and this is one of the big debates, is if it's a good thing, is digital tends to be a winner-take-all because you have equal access to everyone out there. You're going to go to the one with the best community, with the best people, the best ideas, with the best data. Why would you hit a number two, right? So there's this, it is outsized favoring of whoever's got the best. So what we've learned, though, is that point-to-point communication, point-to-point engagement, right, has value, absolutely. But communities have more value. Communities are the best construct. We've achieved amazing things. I've told stories like the story of Fold It, which was in my book, Social Business by Design. Had to plug that once. Is an amazing story about how the AIDS community couldn't solve the HIV, try to understand how to create a cure for HIV, trying to understand how it hid from the human immune system. They spent 20 years and untold billions and tens of thousands of scientists, and at their 20-year meeting, they said, we're not much closer than when we started. The idea that solutions have to come from somewhere else, this is one of the key points I'll be making today, is that, that only communities are large enough to be able to have enough ideas to solve most of your problems. And when they took all the data that they had and they uploaded it to a platform called Fold It, that was the URL, and within 10 days, on the 11th day, the problem was solved definitively about how the HIV virus hid from the human immune system. And that platform has gone on to solve many other problems. And the solution was they opened it up to everyone and then invited people from related disciplines and engineering, puzzle solving, gamers, and that was who solved the problem, by the way, how the protein folded itself and hid. And it did it in just 11 short days, whereas the best, smartest minds in the industry couldn't do it in 20 years. That is the kinds of game-changing differences. If you really think about how to do this and focus on what's so powerful about it and focus on that, you can create these kinds of really amazing outcomes. I have many stories. My book has about 100 examples like that, about as big as that, right? And we still don't have a good collective industry knowledge to understand how important and special this is. This is an unprecedented capability we've never had in human history, right? And we don't look at it that way. We look at it as some kind of incremental improvement, and it's not, is what we've learned. So the key inside here is more connectedness equals more shared value. The more that we can co-create, the more that we can surface everything we know and then wield it and use it in new and innovative ways, right? For our businesses and for society and for everything. And everyone gets the benefit. So we look at, trying to find, this is a chart I created for Bjorn at CBIT a few months ago. Trying to understand, and it turned out to be it came out pretty good because it explains what's different about the old ways, right? Because we've learned in the last 20 years, we don't use these digital tools the same way. We still have them, by the way. We still have email. We've talked about email all these last 2 days, right? Still with us. But it's not clearly communicated about why it's just a kind of a really blunt old tool. We have much more effective tools that do all the things I just talked about, right? And you can see, for example, the scale, right? Email scales up to maybe the low thousands. I'd say it breaks way before then, but people still use it at that scale for sure. Chat works with tens or dozens of people. Wikis with tens of thousands, blogs with millions, enterprise social networks with millions. There's no known limit with community, right? I know of communities that have millions, very successful. The SAP Community Network, the world's largest customer community, has 3 million active users. No problem with scale there. And these things all throw off knowledge, whereas those don't. They might, but they tend not to, right? And they're only to people that we have. This is the problem with the old tools required perfect foreknowledge of who should be involved, and it was almost always wrong. Where these don't make it, we've eliminated that. We say that's not a good thing. We shouldn't do that. We should have this conversation out in the open where anyone can find it who's a stakeholder and get involved, because we probably forgot to invite them. But they require new digital skills, and they require new digital support capabilities to make them work. Community management, right? So this kind of frames up how this journey we've made from the primitive tools now to these much more sophisticated tools that require us to learn a little bit and to provide new capabilities, right? So those are more building blocks. And so the central lesson here, and I try and tell this all the time, is that we've learned that if we're connected to the most valuable resource in human history, that it will do most of the work for us, right? We can come up with the seed of the idea, open it up and say, this is so great, and if the network agrees, it will help you. This is what the open source software world learned, and that's now the dominant model for software. This is what the media industry learned, and now it's the dominant model for media, right? That's why most of the information that exists today is created in social channels, which is not the case in our enterprises, by the way. And this is one of the things we've done. I'm chief strategy officer for 7SUMMITS. We've developed over 170 communities for some of the largest organizations in the world. One of them is Plus Relocation. And they were having a problem. They were an executive relocation firm. And their challenge is it's a very collaborative process. You have these high-powered executives, and they have very complicated relocation requirements, often involving dozens of people, from realtors and movers, and all your utility companies, and all the people that are helping prepare your house, both the old house and the new house for sale and purchase, and on and on. And they realized that email fundamentally broke down. So we proposed, why don't you put community not on this edge on the side, but in the middle of your business process. That is the only way that you'll actually work with these people. And then everyone in that process could see what's going on. There's no coordinating having to be done. The entire process is visible to everyone. So that if a change is made, you don't have to go see, did we tell everyone about that change? Or we don't have to CC everyone. All that is immediately visible. And it's dramatically changed their business and was Salesforce's major innovation award candidate last year. But it's to show that there are companies that are saying, well, no, this is the right way of working. We're not going to do it off to the side. We're going to do it in the middle of how we work, how we do business. So this chart is deliberately complicated. And that is, we've had all this technology that enabled new possibilities, right, off to the side. And we began to notice, hey, when you do something with that, it's really special. Amazing things have happened with communities, right? Countless stories, great examples. But there's no management theory behind it on how to apply it to business when it first came out. And people would just apply wikis to what they're doing and say, we're going to improve collaboration, not understanding that it can improve everything about how we operate and manage our organizations. But that began to emerge. People began to understand that. John Husband was one of the first ones saying, hierarchy. This is leading a new way of working, but it's not really a formalized process of operating. Social business and then holacracy is now the most well-organized, most well-structured management theory for how do you operate as a social business. And large and very successful organizations like Zappos, right, the number one e-commerce shoe company in the United States, have adopted this. Now, it's an ongoing experiment. We'll see how this goes, but it's still early days, right? But we don't teach network leadership and network management theory in our management schools because we're still figuring it all out. Now, the broad outlines are emerging, but it's being aimed directly. We're taking this kind of not a very direct route, which is what this slide is intended to show, saying that eventually we're going to be able to figure out how to run our businesses using this way. We have some sense. Customer care is the easiest one, easiest way to apply customer community. We see that information location and expertise location and knowledge sharing is very good for enterprise social networks, but those are just the crude starting points for how we're going to get all this. So this is where we kind of come from. And so we've learned is what people do is what defines the value of digital, right? So the inputs and the tools, they're important, but they don't nearly matter as much as what activities take place. Working out loud is something we've talked a whole bunch the last couple of days. We know that a bunch of value comes out of that if we get people to do that, all these emergent outcomes that are quite valuable. But it's also given rise to what I call the collaboration paradox. The more tools we have, the less connected we seem. This is an exercise where I said, hey, if I take all of our functions and the different kinds of vertical solutions, is there a product in every one of those spaces? Well, there was more than one product standing on every one of these, right? So if you're in legal, there is an intranet product designed just for you, right? If you're in R&D, there are unified communication solutions just designed for R&D departments. I couldn't believe that. But every one of these has one, and they all are successful, or at least they're operating businesses. People are buying this. And none of these things talk to each other very well. Some of them do. And the ones that do talk to each other very well, I'm talking about Slack again, are solving a lot of this problem. But this is one of the things we have to get through. Email has it, and that's why it's still here. Anyone's email client can talk to anyone else's email client. Very few of these work together, right? They might integrate with Microsoft Office or something. So that's another issue. We need building blocks that will solve that. We don't have them yet, by the way. There's some companies like App Fusions, and there's a few open source projects that try, but none of them have real traction yet. So this is the real collaboration landscape. It's point-to-point still, but lots of community, right? Workforce communities, partner communities, customer communities. And the other issue is we're not the only ones doing this, right? Our workers are saying, hey, I can't wait for this to happen. Some of our workers are going out and helping themselves, a lot of them, as it turns out, right? These are not talking about 10%, not talking 20%, right? More like 30% of workers are helping themselves with the tools they think will help them get their job done, right? You don't give them the building blocks, they will. So I believe, and we've talked about it the last couple of days, that we need a multi-layered collaboration strategy. I think it's going to break down to probably 2 major hubs, but I don't know. This is all supposition because we don't know how this is going to play out, but we know we have to do better than we're doing today. One is a mass collaboration platform that connects well to a lot of the other tools. And the other one's a team scale collaboration platform. I think ESNs and team collaboration are going to have to coexist. I think that horse has left the barn. But we can make them coexist better, right? So we're going to have to sort out the multi-layered collaboration. And I'm actively talking to companies that are experimenting with this. I'm hoping next year maybe I can tell you some good stories. So organizations will have to connect all of these communities is the message. We don't have a good way of doing it now. We're not doing it, and we are hurt by it. The less we let anyone participate, the less value that we get. right? And that's because the scale of collaboration really matters. That was what folded example. When they opened it up to everyone, they solved their problem in very, very short order. I see that pattern over and over and over again, right? And when we don't share, when we're not open, when we're not transparent, we're actually harming ourselves. So the digital transformation requires enlisting the whole organization. There's too much change to do. Everyone needs to take their part of the business that they know the best and apply the knowledge they have with the central help of the organization. And so I've been talking not about a center of excellence. We're seeing a lot of digital transformation centers of excellence. I believe that the network of excellence is going to be the key, right? Taking change agents who are willing to help across the organization. And what we're seeing is, I've actually built a couple of these now for very large organizations. We're seeing that you get about 2% of the organization with people who are really passionate about changing their part with the skills. And you give them a little bit of support and expertise and advisory, and they can change that part of the organization in a consistent manner with everything else that you're doing. Network of excellence, I think, is the model. And the platform for it, of course, I bet you can guess what I'm going to recommend there. So companies must build a scalable digital metabolism that will stay on that curve. That means we have to decentralize change. There's too much to do it. If you take the digital department or the IT department or whoever is supposed to be doing this change, it's too small. It's 5%. In terms of budget of a typical organization. And they have to do technology for the entire company when technology is central to everything we do in business now. And you can see why that doesn't work. So we see that companies that don't just kind of pave that cow path, that they change the nature of supply and demand in the market, this is McKinsey Global Institute data, are the ones that are seeing the best results in the industry, right? So rethinking the business and saying, all right, if we have problems to solve for our customers, how can we use these new ways to rethink supply and demand? The example would be Hilton Hotels realizing, hey, there's all this unused housing out there. Why don't we build a way of connecting people who want to stay with them with the people with all this excess capacity? That's what Airbnb did, right? But they didn't. They didn't change the nature of supply and demand. They kept doing the same old thing that they did. Now, Airbnb is bigger than the top 3 hotel chains combined. Right? They dominate, they own that industry, and they did it in just a few short years by changing the nature of supply and demand. By the way, Airbnb and all those sharing economy companies are community-oriented. Like Uber takes communities of vehicle owners and drivers and connects them to their community of people who need transportation. And they put a business model between those two communities, and boom. So having these communities is so important, and then being able to reshape that law of supply and demand. So, and how much time do I have left? 5 minutes? Okay, I'll try and bring it under 5. So one key to results is we have to holistically organize for digital transformation, right? Even though we're going to be doing the actual changing part decentralized, but we can coordinate it through our enterprise social networks and through our communities, right? To make all the pieces fit together. We're not going to go through this. Again, I said these are signposts. This is my latest view of all the building blocks you need for workforce collaboration on the inside, okay? I have this, you can easily find this online. But those are the building blocks there. I want you just want to make you aware of them. This is the building blocks for digital business. This has been picked up, and I asked a lot of people in the analyst world and in the digital business world to help me build this picture here. But these, again, more pieces. We're starting to understand what the moving parts are. These pictures, and pictures like it, didn't even really exist more than a couple years ago. Because things have changed so much. But now we've got, you'll see in here things like community and community management. That's core to digital business, for example. Other things like open APIs and change champion programs. These are all really important parts of it. So to wrap up, digital engagement building blocks. This is the traditional view. Content and conversation delivered through channels pushed to people. We're flipping that upside down. Right, and we're enabling co-creation. Right, communities are the greatest creative force that we know of. Right, we're going to many companies are standing this on the head, and the consumers are pulling themselves what they need and using these things that we provide. All we can really provide are these platforms for co-creation with an architecture of participation, because our millions of customers and our thousands of workers are our 2 single greatest assets, and we're greatly underutilizing them. That's what these things can do, is really reach that potential. So The digital change will happen because of the platform that we create. And the platform is going to have the business models, a change platform, leadership platform, a talent network, service delivery, and the technology underneath it. That seems to be the pieces that we need to put together to drive continuous digital transformation. It's an ongoing journey, right? And an exciting one. But we're working very inefficiently now. We can build better ways to deliver that. So what's worked in the past won't work in the future is the bottom line. And I'm not going to go through all these. That's all research for you. But most of them are self-evident, I believe. So it's again, we're still in the very early days. It feels like we're 10 years into social networks and community, but it's just, it's the end of the beginning, right? And now we're really going to start the actual process. The imperative is there. The desire now is at last there. We see a lot more, the C-suite attention on this is there to get the resources and the budget. So I'm very excited about the potential. Thank you.
Thank you.